The map of Europe was not written with ink, but with the sound of boots on frozen mud and the smell of wet wool and black powder. We stand at the edge of the 18th century, where the Old World, a collection of divine rights, ancient lineages, and borders drawn by the marriages of kings, is beginning to liquefy. In 1799, the French Republic is a feverish, exhausted experiment, a nation of 28 million people who have killed their king and discovered that liberty is a heavier burden than chains. The air in Paris is thick with the scent of coal smoke and the metallic tang of blood that refuses to wash out of the cobblestones. We look at the faces in the streets. They are hungry, suspicious, and desperate for a center that will hold. The revolution had promised the notion, the idea that a man is defined by his merit and his rights, but the nation is starving, surrounded by monarchies that view the French experiment as a plague to be cauterized. Into this vacuum of exhausted idealism steps a man who is not quite French, a man from an island of granite and vendettas, carrying a belief system that will eventually turn the entire continent into a laboratory of human ambition. We see him first not as an emperor, but as a thin, sallow officer with unpowdered hair, standing in a room where the floorboards creak under the weight of political failure. Napoleon Bonaparte is the physical manifestation of the notion's darkest contradiction, that to save the law, one must sometimes break it. It is a staggering reality of this moment that the very people who fought to end the tyranny of one man are now cheering for the arrival of another. We witness the coup of 18 Brumaire not as a glorious triumph, but as a messy, fumbled scuffle in the orangerie at Saint-Cloud. There is no music, only the shouting of angry deputies and the nervous rattling of bayonets. When the dust settles, the Republic is dead, but the revolution is being packaged into a code. We watch as the ink dries on the Napoleonic Code, a document that strips away the chaotic local customs of 1,000 years and replaces them with a single, cold, logical framework. For the first time, a peasant in the south and a merchant in the north live under the same rules. It is the birth of the modern state, yet it is born from the grip of a dictator. We feel the tension here. The notion of equality is being preserved, but the notion of liberty is being traded for the nation's security. The landscape of Europe in 1805 is a tapestry of aging empires, and we are there on the heights of Pratzen as the sun begins to burn through the morning mist of Austerlitz. The ground is hard with frost, and the breath of 75,000 French soldiers rises in a collective cloud. Across the valley, the Russian and Austrian emperors wait with the confidence of centuries. We see the trap being set. Napoleon purposefully weakens his right flank, inviting the blow, a gamble that risks the very existence of his army. The soundscape is a terrifying cacophony of whistling iron and the rhythmic thud of the pas de charge drums. When the French breakthrough occurs, we watch the Russian retreat turn into a nightmare on the frozen Sachin ponds. The ice shatters under the weight of retreating men and horses, and the water swallows them. In this moment, the nation has become a predator. The victory is absolute, but as we look at the wreckage, we realize the cost of this new order. The notion of the citizen soldier has created an army that moves faster and hits harder than any mercenary force in history, but it has also turned war into a totalizing endeavor that no longer stops for winter or for the traditional rules of the gentleman's game. We move through the streets of Berlin and Vienna, noticing how the arrival of the French brings both liberation and humiliation. We see the Jewish ghettos being torn down by French decree, the gates opened, and the notion of universal citizenship applied at the point of a sword. It is a moral paradox we cannot easily resolve. A shopkeeper in Frankfurt might now have the right to own land and trade freely, but he must also pay taxes to a foreign master and watch his sons be conscripted into a war they do not understand. The notion is traveling in the baggage wagons of the Grande Armée. It is a period of irreversible change. The Holy Roman Empire, a 1,000-year-old ghost, is dissolved with the stroke of a pen. But as the French borders expand to include Rome, Hamburg, and Barcelona, the nation begins to lose its shape. It is no longer a country, it is an ego draped in ermine. We stand in Notre-Dame in 1904 and witness the moment Napoleon takes the crown from the Pope's hands. He does not wait to be blessed, he blesses himself. The silence in the cathedral is heavy. We sense the betrayal. The man who was the sword of the revolution has become the architect of a new aristocracy. The physical environment of the Peninsular War offers a different, grittier reality. We are in the dust-choked hills of Spain, where the sun is a physical weight, and the water in the wells is often poisoned. Here, the notion of the Enlightenment meets the notion of faith and soil. The Spanish peasant does not care for the Napoleonic Code or the abolition of the Inquisition if it comes from a Frenchman who stables horses in his church. We witness the birth of the guerrilla, the little war. It is a landscape of nerves where a straggling messenger is found nailed to a barn door and a village is burned in retaliation. The French army, once the liberators of Europe, is now a target in a land that refuses to be civilized by force. We see the frustration in the eyes of the French marshals. They can defeat armies, but they cannot defeat a ghost. This is where the nation begins to bleed internally. The resources of France are being drained into a Spanish ulcer that will not heal, proving that a notion imposed from above can never survive the notion grown from the roots of a culture. We follow the Grande Armée in 1812 as it crosses the Niemen River into Russia. There are nearly 700,000 men, a moving city of leather, steel, and ambition. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend, a demographic shift of an entire generation. But the landscape here is indifferent. We feel the heat of the Russian summer, a stifling, dusty furnace that kills more men through typhus and exhaustion than the Cossacks do. The silence of the Russian plains is louder than the cannons. We enter Moscow and find it a hollow shell, a city of wooden houses that begins to burn as soon as we settle in. The fire is not an accident, it is a scorched earth policy, a refusal to play by the rules of surrender. We stand in the Kremlin and realize that the nation has reached its limit. There is no more territory to conquer, only a void that swallows everything. The retreat is not a march, it is a disintegration. We feel the first snowflakes of October, small and harmless, until they become a white shroud. We see soldiers fighting over the carcass of a horse, and the elite Imperial Guard, reduced to ghosts, huddling around fires made of looted furniture. The notion of the great man who controls destiny is shattered by the simple, brutal reality of the Russian winter. In the aftermath of the Russian catastrophe, we witness the collective reckoning of Europe. The nations that were once trampled, Prussia, Austria, Sweden, now adopt the very methods Napoleon used against them. They have learned that the nation must be unified and the people must be invested in the struggle. We are at Leipzig in 1813, the Battle of the Nations, where the scale of slaughter reaches a new peak. The sky is dark with the smoke of 500,000 men. It is here that the nation of France is finally pushed back to its natural borders. We see Napoleon in the palace of Fontainebleau, a man who once commanded the world, now staring at a piece of paper that demands his abdication. He attempts to take his own life with a vial of poison he carried since Russia, but it has lost its potency.
Even death refuses to cooperate with his timing. He is exiled to Elba, a tiny island that is a cruel parody of the empire he once held. We think the story has ended, that the old kings can return to their thrones and pretend the last 20 years were a bad dream. But the notion cannot be exiled. We watch as Louis XVIII returns to Paris in the baggage of the Allied armies, trying to restore the divine right to a people who have spent 2 decades believing in the rights of man. It is a fragile, awkward restoration. When Louis escapes Elba and lands in the south of France, we witness an event that defies logic. The soldiers sent to arrest him instead fall into his arms. We see the king flee in the middle of the night, leaving his slippers behind. The 100 days is a final, desperate gasp of the Napoleonic dream, but the world has moved on. We stand on the ridge at Waterloo, where the mud is so deep that it swallows the horse's legs. The sound of the British squares holding firm against the French cavalry is like the ticking of a clock. When the Prussian army arrives through the woods of Wavre, the collapse is final. We see Napoleon fleeing the field, not as a conqueror, but as a man who has run out of time and luck. The final act takes place on a volcanic rack in the middle of the Atlantic, St. Helena. We are in a damp, wind-swept house called Longwood, where the former emperor of the West spends his days dictating his memoirs and arguing with his British jailer over the title of general versus emperor. The physical environment is a prison of mist and rats. Here we see the ultimate struggle between the man and the myth. He is no longer shaping the nation, so he spends his remaining strength shaping the notion of his legacy. He recreates himself as the martyr of the revolution, the man who only wanted a United States of Europe and was stopped by the reactionary gold of England. We witness his slow decline, the stomach cancer eating him from within, until his death in 1821. His body is eventually returned to France, to a tomb of red quartzite under the dome of Les Invalides. But the man himself remains a ghost that haunts the architecture of every modern state. We look back at the trail of millions of graves across the continent and ask what remains. The borders changed back, then changed again and again. But the legal codes, the systems of education, the centralized bureaucracies, and the concept of a merit-based society remained. We see the tension between the nation's need for order and the notion's cry for freedom still vibrating in the streets of every European city. We witness a world that was broken by his ambition, but rebuilt in his image. The emperor who reshaped Europe did not do so with a lasting peace, but by introducing an instability that we have never quite managed to settle. He proved that an idea, once released, cannot be gathered back into the bottle of the old order. We are left standing in the silence of the battlefield, looking at a landscape that is both more rational and more dangerous than the one that existed before he arrived. If a single man can bend the trajectory of an entire civilization through the sheer force of his will and a set of ideas, what does that say about the fragility of the systems we believe are permanent? Would you like me to explore the specific cultural shifts in art and science that occurred during the Napoleonic era?